Hello and welcome to the Tucson Bitcoin podcast. Today I have Nicole Dahl on, who is the director of Hotel McCoy. As you listen to this interview, I think you'll fall in love with her and the business model that Hotel McCoy has. It's just incredible. It's so radically different than what we traditionally see in the hospitality industry and just in business in general. You know, they're a community first, employee first organization, and I think we all want that, and we all know that uh, there's a lot of benefit to doing that, but we just don't see it in the world of business very often. And yeah, I mean, it's been a business that's been hit tremendously hard by everything going on with COVID, and they've been able to survive due to community support, which is just, really incredible and encouraging to hear. But the sad part is that the struggle is not over. We're coming to an end in 2020, but the chaos looks like it's going to continue. Anyways, I really hope you enjoyed this, and hope that you take the time to support them and other local businesses that really engage and care about the community. Welcome, Nicole. Good to have you on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
So, you're the director of Hotel McCoy. How long have you guys been open for?
We softly opened Labor Day weekend of 2018. So
Cool.
A little over 2 years.
Awesome. And so it's a very community-oriented business. So what inspired you to go that route instead of a more traditional business model?
So before working with Hotel McCoy, I had a consulting agency working with smaller businesses on concepts that could help them stand out in their comp set. It's a little bit harder to be competitive as a smaller business because there's so many of them, and a lot of them are within whatever industry. So my kind of reputation as a consultant was, one, to work with me, you had to be willing to do a people first company culture, and two, be community minded, not only because it's the ethical right thing to do, but it's actually a long game revenue driver.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's seems like a great way to build out a pretty dedicated customer base, because when they see a company that really cares about the community and cares about their employees, I think they feel good about being a customer of your business for sure.
Yeah, it allows, rather than just being like a guest at a hotel, when people stay with us, if they get the concept, it's not for everybody, but if they are into oh, I want to be a part of something and wanting a connection, then they stay there, but they take a piece of art home with them from a local artist, and then they follow us on Instagram and stay in touch, and they become sort of a part of the hotel. And then that is not only feels really good just as people that are employees there, it makes us feel warm and fuzzy when people recognize that we're doing something different. But it also, then they tell their friend who says, I'm gonna be driving from Texas to California, I know I need to stay somewhere in Arizona. They're like, oh my gosh, you have to stay in this spot. And they have a story to tell, rather than oh, the beds were really comfortable and it was clean, which is important, but you need something a little more than that to gain customer loyalty in the hotel industry.
Yeah, absolutely. Next time my family stops by Tucson, I'll make sure to send them your way.
Awesome.
One of the things that I thought was really cool that you guys did was one year for Christmas, you did what was called a Christmas safe space for people.
Yeah.
And, a lot of people have negative connotations with safe space. They hear the word and get upset. And, if for anybody listening, get over it. But, what I thought was cool about it is your bartender was describing why that was important. And one of the things he suggested was, or stated, was that a lot of people just do not have a great situation with their family, and it's really difficult and trying. And so you guys wanted to work with that and offer a place where people could enjoy the holiday. So yeah, I thought that was really cool, and it sounded like it was a employee driven effort. Somebody had the idea and you supported it. So
Yeah, honestly, that's like a lot of the things you see at Hotel McCoy are um, because we have like a sort of a no ego rule in leadership. So a lot of our ideas that you see roll out come from employees that work there. Like every Monday on social media, we do a Music Monday. And that's one of our awesome front desk agents, Amanda Rochelle. She is a super talented singer and plays the ukulele and guitar. And so she just said, would it be okay if I did a cover song every Monday and we call it Music Monday? Like, yeah, that's awesome. So every Monday she sings like a song, and some day like she covers Amy Winehouse. And last week she wrote her own like version of I'm Dreaming of a White Christmas for Tucson. And people always look forward to it. She just has this like smiley face and happy voice. And that's 100% her idea. And just like our employees are all so creative. And I've worked in cultures and companies where it's like, no, my title is creative director and I'm in charge of the ideas. And like, it hurts my ego for you to come to me. And so it was really important at this hotel to make sure that we actually had a policy against that. It's like everybody who has an idea can come forward and share it. And a lot of times, my answer when someone comes with a creative idea is like, okay, how does that work? How are you going to execute it? Like, if you're willing to take lead on it and make it happen, like you can have the hours to do it and flex your creativity. And it's just been pretty successful because we do a lot of cool stuff. And it's just it's not like 50% of the time, not my idea at all.
yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I've noticed, well, I haven't been alive very long, but in my lifetime, what we've seen is a consolidation of like just about every industry going more and more corporate. And in the corporate environment, I think people feel really or can feel very disempowered and unimportant. And there's like an attitude of you have to comply. I know I worked in a corporate setting and I bring ideas to my supervisors pretty frequently, and they would just treat me like I was a moron, and and
Yeah.
which is fine. But there's another thing coupled with it, um, which is that majority of the country is living paycheck to paycheck and doesn't have the luxury to really like stir the pot and push back in that type of environment. And because like getting fired would mean a catastrophe, loss of insurance, potential eviction. People don't have savings. They live off of credit cards in the form of a crisis. So I think having a work environment for your employees that's like that could be really refreshing. And I think the small business environment is definitely tailored to provide that a lot more because it's personal. And yeah.
It's interesting because like I think for a long time like that was the case, and then there's been a little bit of a shift where like corporations with social media have more accountability than small businesses almost. So
Hmm.
like I think that was the old school corporate way, but now you see like bigger businesses that are really having to be upfront about here's how we're taking care of our employees, especially with like 2020. And it's almost been like tougher for small businesses because you don't have that reserve, where corporations like I think Starbucks floated their when they closed stores at the beginning of COVID. I have a friend who works for Starbucks, and they like floated their employees' paycheck even though the store was closed, and that's like so cool that they were able to do that. But like some smaller businesses can't, and so I think for our business, I can only speak on ours. Having like a people first culture without the corporate responsibility is really important. And I would love to say that all small businesses are like minded, but I've worked with a lot of small businesses, and that's not always the case. Sometimes you get into this, like, especially when it's like, sometimes in small businesses, the person running it, it's very like ego driven and that old
Mhm.
school, like, I'm your boss. You should be so lucky to work here. And because I've worked in those situations and I worked in corporate, when I had the opportunity to lead Hotel McCoy, it was really my first time, doing a startup and our mission is to open more locations. So when I started building the, kind of like mission and policies and procedures and values, I was doing so thinking like, okay, how can I make this work with one location, but also make sure that we are committed to these values with 10 locations. And so part of that is like, and I'm not perfect. Like sometimes still when an employee comes to me and says like, you messed up, or I have this idea, and I like start to get stressful or it hurts my ego, like I can feel myself shutting it down right away. And then I
Mhm.
literally have to check myself and remember like, you've made a commitment to be like an ethical, open, communicative leader. And I'll say, if I need to, I'll say like, let me take a day, and like cheesy cliche business line, let me take a day and circle back to it. And then by the time I've circled back, I'm like, yeah, tell me your idea, let's go. But I think it takes a lot more work to run your business that way and your corporation that way. But ultimately, like for me, like I would not want to run a business where people are miserable and constantly like looking for other jobs because they don't want to be there. Work is work. You're always going to have tough days, but ultimately, like my goal is to provide a place for people to work and feel excited about coming in and feel appreciated and feel valued and feel like a sense of like purpose and belonging. Because I don't know, I spent like a good chunk of my 20s not in those situations, and it's really mentally taxing to not, we spend more time at work than we do at home.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it takes a lot of energy to admit that you're wrong and self-evaluate for sure. It's a
It's
lot
a growth
easier just.
process for sure.
Mhm. But yeah, I mean, I think when I've had employers that have been able to use that, it builds a whole new level of trust and respect and loyalty, to know that this person isn't just out to take, to exploit you for your labor and take
Yeah.
advantage of you. And yeah, I mean, I think one of the most important skill sets to have is to be able to admit that you made a mistake and admit that you were wrong. And but yeah, so you kind of alluded to 2020 being a tough year for small businesses. How have you guys handled that?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because like nobody was prepared for, a pandemic or the economic ramifications of our reaction to it. So when, we had a great January and February, like really great. We're like, ooh, we're going to exceed in 2018, which was cool. And then March, all of a sudden, we had the cancellations. And in the hotel industry, people prepay, right? So you're kind of like running on future revenue. So when the cancellations came, you're having to refund people with money that sometimes like has already been spent, which was kind of scary. Luckily, like we have a very smart investment team, so we were prepared as much as one could possibly be. Um, I think initially I was like, oh my gosh, what can we do? I started 2020 with like 4 white hairs, and now like I have to dye my hair because I have a full like half of a head of white hairs because the stress of like not only wanting to succeed in my own job but having 20 employees that whose livelihood come off of this job, and then all of a sudden having 100 people staying at your hotel and zero was really scary. But I was like, okay, I've kind of like lived my life on when everybody's panicking, instead of focusing on my own fear, how can we help others? And so that's kind of always been the hotel's thing. So instead of being like, we need help, we were like, who can we serve? And so we realized that a lot of artists and hospitality workers were losing their income. There was no eviction moratorium. And then also in like the arts industry, a lot of times people are renting rooms without leases or staying on couches. And when you have everyone telling you like there's this horrible, scary virus going around, people were like, okay, I'm not going to rent you a room in my house anymore. You need to go find somewhere else because I need to be able to like quarantine with my family, or I don't like the way that you're living your life right now and it's not comfortable for me. So you had all these people displaced from their homes. So Hotel McCoy we reduced our monthly rate, and we offered a reduced rate. And then we worked with our investors to offer a grant, a housing grant to people to help supplement that. So we had some artists staying with us for like all utilities paid for like a very, very nominal fee. And we did it at a bit of a loss, but it was like we had these rooms empty and we had this need that needed to be filled. And so we kind of on a leap of faith, we're like, if we help where we can, the community will come back and support us when they're able to and when we needed to. And that's exactly what happened. People were like, wow, thank you for helping our artists in our community. When it's safe for me to take a staycation, I'm going to. Or when people travel, I'm going to come to you. And then because of that reaction, and then we also did like free breakfast for like wildfire victims and or people that were house people that were displaced from the fires. But because of that reaction of helping, people in Tucson came and supported us, and we had a better summer, a better June and July 2020 fiscally than we did in 2019 because of locals coming and taking staycations because they're like, you helped our community, we're here to help you. And I thought that was, I mean, I wasn't sure what was going to happen, but that was a really beautiful turn of events. So we had a really rough March, April, May, and then summer was awesome because of locals and like people from Phoenix taking staycations. And then we really responded early with a cleaning campaign called Beyond Clean, and we were like, whatever the CDC and the AHLA, which is like the American Hotel and Lodging Association, whatever they say the standards are, we're going to do a little bit above. So that's what we've been doing. So before Tucson or Pima or anybody mandated us to do certain things, we were already doing them, and we shared on our website, like we do drive-through check-in, our bar was takeout only, we aren't entering the rooms when you're in there. When a guest checks out, we leave the room empty for 24 hours before our staff enters and cleans it, so you know that like no one's been in that room. Then it's deep cleaned, we got UV wands. So we're doing whatever, like regardless of what anyone's personal opinion is on this, like our job is to make anyone who is nervous feel safe. And so we did that from the beginning, and then because of that we also got a lot of bookings, and then coupled with the fact that our employees are literal like the most amazing people. I think to make people feel welcome and warm and connected with half your face covered is a talent that is underrated. Like the people that I work with are absolutely incredible. My housekeeping team, like people will come and say, this is the cleanest hotel, I actually feel safe here. And then my front desk team, they're like, they're so friendly, I haven't felt like warmth and connection in months, and your employee just made me feel like a human again for the first time in months. So that all of that combined helped us survive 2020. And I don't like share our exact numbers, but I'll say like the national average of hotels is down 54% from 2019 to 2020, and then I believe Tucson January to August was down 34%. And I can say that our hotel did better than both of those numbers, and all of that is because of our incredible team and that response. And we've been doing great. The latest like regulations in Pima and Tucson have affected us fiscally, and it's very frustrating to have pivoted and persevered and then get one more hit at the end of the year. But we're just doing what we can and still like keeping people safe and being positive and being warm and trying to just keep surviving.
Yeah, I mean, wow, that it's a pretty impressive story, and I think people need to hear stuff like that because what we've seen across the board is just this demoralization of society. People are isolated. They turn on the news and it's just one terrible thing after another. There's a lot of like partisan fighting, and this guy is bad, this guy is good. Black and white thinking. Just a lot of craziness, and to hear that being involved in your community, like as a business owner, that you can make a difference and help people. Like some of the most horrifying things I've seen have been the people impacted by the wildfires. I mean, I just can't imagine what it'd be like to have to leave your home and then to return to it just burned down. Everything is just gone. And the sense of powerlessness, and to have a business that welcomes you and is working to take care of you. And I mean, that's just incredible that you guys were able to do that. Yeah, it's been pretty disappointing to me to see the way a lot of the decisions our elected officials have been making are impacting average people um, uh, and impacting small businesses, because one of the things I had Paul Mendoza on the podcast from the Tucson Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and he was talking about the importance of small businesses and community, as far as like, when we go and we spend money at like these bigger corporations like Target versus a local shop, uh, the proportion of the money staying in the community is just like a night and day difference. And and so I mean, I just can't emphasize enough the importance of uh, in our community, the role that people like you have, and just making sure that there is a thriving economy. And I think another thing that's been really disappointing in 2020 is like how the word economy is being associated with the stock market, because the stock market is not a representation of the economy. The economy is like the savings that people have, homelessness and unemployment, things like that. And one of the things that you talked about was the uh, the eviction moratorium. That was something that I didn't really think of until I had somebody on the podcast talking about it. As far as the amount of people that have been thrown out of their that will be thrown out of their homes because of things outside of their control. Um, it's not been something that's covered in the news a lot. So what have you seen around that specifically?
Yeah, it's really tough. Like, I think that's a sensitive subject because, I mean, I know people that are renters. Like, I actually just bought a house like before I was renting, and I had to leave because um, they raised the rent. So I've been a renter. Um, but I also know people who are landlords, and like part of their rent is their income. And because there was no mortgage moratorium, but there was an eviction moratorium, that's causing like a whole nother crisis. It's just, it was, I'll say this about policy. I think that when a lot of the policy made in 2019 and 2020, especially locally here, county and city, has been very focused on physical health, which is important. Like, we do need to be protected from a virus for sure. But when you're making policy, you have to think of mental health and physical health too. And if you're not thinking of all three, I mean, like I just saw the headlines today that suicide has spiked twice in Pima County this year. And it's not surprising to me because economic devastation is wildly depressing. So the eviction moratorium is ending. Hopefully something will come through, but I also think like a mortgage moratorium needs to come through. That's more of a federal policy. But there's just anytime you make a policy like that, there has to be like an aid package that comes through that takes care of everybody involved. We have, I think we still have 7 like people living with us at the hotel from that, that they're, because of their career fields, they still haven't been able to recover to go find traditional living spaces. And like we're doing it for as long as we can, but like we do, if we're going to be providing that aid, eventually we're going to need help too. So yeah, it's a tough thing. Like, I think I'm pretty vocal on my personal social media that um, I respect and actually care for personally a lot of people who work in government in Tucson and Pima. Like, I know their hearts, but I'm really disappointed with the rollout because we do have people that are um, losing their homes. And what I know, I can think of 3 people off the top of my head that are very valuable contributing community members that are actually in the middle of moving to Maricopa or even out of state because they no longer have a viable way to survive in Tucson or Pima, but they're able to do that elsewhere. And that to me is alarming because our community, like, what makes Tucson special is our people. And if we're losing people who want to be here but can't economically survive, that's a problem.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I'm a pretty staunch um, I believe pretty strongly in Austrian economics, and uh, some of my heroes are people like Friedrich Hayek, and when you're talking, a lot of his work comes to mind where he talks about the government being unable to intervene in the economies well. And I think what it comes down to, and like what you said, is it's a really difficult topic because there's a lot of good people trying to help. Um, and I think what this is showing is just the tools are um, that they have at their disposal aren't the most helpful. So every time that there's a government decision to do anything in the economy, whether it's subsidies or taxes or um, just shutting down and restrictions, there's unintended consequences, and it's really hard to make decisions because oftentimes they're making decisions off of bad data. So like a lot of the data that they use to make decisions like CPI or consumer price index, which measures inflation, is just a total bogus uh, metric because we know that everything's getting more expensive at a rate higher than 2 to 3% a year. So like the things that matter like healthcare and stuff like that, and it impacts us, and it impacts our community, and is um, pretty devastating. So yeah. So as far as inflation, so since you've been a business owner, have you noticed things getting more expensive and it being difficult to deal with?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, I can only really speak for hotels right now. But our rates have stayed like pretty much the same because in hotels you have like a comp set, so or a composition set, and it's like you all kind of like look at each other and you're like, what are they doing? What are they doing? And you can't raise the rate and then your comp set not raise the rate because then people are going to book there because even if you're cool and friendly, $20 is $20. Um, so we haven't raised our rates, but our expenses have gone up, like on supplies, especially cleaning supplies are more expensive, and obviously that's like a must-have. Um, we are really lucky because we work with local vendors when we can, and like our local vendors, like we work with Presta Coffee and Tucson Tamales and Glue Factory, and all of them really keep their prices so fair. So that's been great. But I would say like the cleaning supplies have been um, our biggest hit this year. And then, um, yeah, that's probably the big one. It's just like you have to, especially with COVID, you have to have
Hmm.
quality cleaning supplies. And then when, you think about like as a hotel or a restaurant, you have to have disinfectant, you have to have bleach, you have to have toilet paper. And as a consumer, just like it was hard for us to find that personally, it's also difficult to find that as a business. And because of that, the suppliers are able to raise their prices. And so our costs went up as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, toilet paper's been a ridiculous thing that's happened, and it's
Yeah.
just
As a hotel with like 90 rooms and 101 bathrooms, it's like we had to get some toilet paper.
yeah, all those selfish people that are stockpiling it and being weird. You need to cut it out. Um, yeah, I mean, that's an interesting one. So that's kind of like a double whammy. So when there's a need to really step up the cleaning requirements, all the cleaning supplies go up pretty substantially. So where have you had to cut money or spending in certain places to be able to kind of eat those at added costs?
No, and what's really interesting? I had a meeting with one of our investors today, our main investor, and like we're really lucky. Like without saying too much, like none of our salaried employees have had to take salary cuts. We haven't done any wage cuts. Um, we the hotel industry is like the last major industry in line to understand that people are an investment and not a cost. And I have some theories on why that is, but I have a lot of friends that work in hotels, and like immediately when COVID started, a lot of the hotel management companies and corporations cut salaries across the board. Like 20% was kind of the magical number, and then had salaried employees working like 80 hours a week to cover hourly employees, and then furloughed all the hourly employees. And I've just been a big believer from the beginning that people are an amenity, right? Like that's one of the reasons you choose to go frequent a business is how your customer interaction and experience is. So I'm really like thankful to work with investors that understood that. And so they have, not had a great year as investors, but we haven't cut costs and labor. And so really our big costs are labor and supplies. So labor we didn't cut, supplies went up. Um, we we really haven't cut back on spending, but also like I think because of that, our revenue hasn't dropped as much as anybody else. I mean, obviously, like there's less labor because we have less guests, but no, our strategy was a little different, and we talk about the long game, right? So you can play business in the short game or the long game, and in the short game, you're just like, what expenses can I cut this year because revenue is low this year, and that's one way to go about it. But I believe that the best approach for business is the long game. So if I can treat my employees or, as a business, because I'm an employee too, if we can treat our employees like, okay, this is a tough year, but we understand that like you're still the same person and the same value. So we're not going to cut your salary. We're going to take a loss as like a business and an investor for this year. And then our hope is that when things get better, that everyone feels that, okay, I was cared for, nobody cut my salary, nobody cut my wage. And now like this, whereas I look at the hotel over there and everybody's salaries got cut. I don't know, I can't say for sure that it's the right approach, but it feels like the right approach to me that you do that. So I would guess like we haven't cut expenses in other ways. I mean, in relativity we have, like we're obviously not, if we're not sold out, we don't need as many employees like on staff. So hours have gotten cut a little bit, but not that much. And yeah, we do things very differently from other hotels. But again, I think that that's part of the reason why our like actual revenue didn't drop as much as the national average.
Yeah. I mean, what you're describing is so different from a large majority of other countries, and just the business attitude in general of I mean, I saw a funny tweet from Elon Musk saying that too many American companies are ran by MBAs, um, and I think also something that it really, what you're talking about, I think really describes the character of your investors, and it just says a lot for them to be able to forego some return. And I think probably it's because they believe in the long term of what you guys are doing over there. And I think that is a pretty cool aspect. But yeah, I mean, as far as like the short term versus the long term, there's this idea of like just leveraging up on debt, and I think the incentive structure is built that way because it you know I won't go into it too much, but like when we look at the stock market um, and the way that these companies are valued, there's this attitude of like like I saw a funny tweet about all the different tech companies and their valuation, like comparing Tesla to Ford, specifically because Ford, has this huge kind of dominant market share. Their trucks are everywhere. You see like 100 Ford cars for one Tesla, and if not more. And yet, the valuation of Tesla is driven so much higher. And I think that's, it's something that's really unfortunate, because when you look at the incentive structures, there's energy working against, your business model, as far as, investors focused on returns. These, you're not a publicly traded company, but like in the public world, there's any sort of added revenue that they get, they dump into share buybacks, and they borrow for share buybacks, to prop up the value of the stock to make investors happy. And it's all done at the expense of normal people at the end of the day. And I think that's really, really sad. And yeah, I mean, that's why I'm so adamant about, these different things. Um, so yeah, as far as like one thing that you talked about earlier is you said you had a good investment team. So does it mean that you take your savings and have to put it into different financial tools other than cash, or what did you mean by that?
We have like a main investor and one other investor in this location, and I just mean that they
Oh,
are very smart and like yet they consider people, which is really nice because I don't think I would be able to work there otherwise. And even right now, like I'm having just being like fully vulnerable. This particular week has been really hard because as soon as FEMA banned sports and the curfew came, we got this whole new. We'd like just been finding like our like footing and all of this, and then that new regulation that just came out in December caused another flood of cancellations and people calling and saying like, "Oh, I'm going to Phoenix now or I'm going to Scottsdale now," and so I'm watching our occupancy fall in a new way that I wasn't anticipating, and having to lighten the schedule because if there's only 30 people staying at our hotel, I don't need a full staff. And it's like right before Christmas, and it's just really hard because even though I'm not cutting anybody's wage, I just can't, like, as a business, I can't have a bunch of people at work with nothing to do. Like, our housekeeping team cleans the rooms until they're clean. And if there's only 12 rooms to clean, there's only 12 rooms to clean. And so we were doing so well and we were sold out almost every night. And then it's just like people see, a soccer tournament gets moved to Phoenix and then you lose 10 rooms there. And then the volleyball tournament moves to Phoenix and you lose 10 rooms there. And I'm really like, besides going to work and grocery shopping, like I stay home. I'm personally not playing volleyball tournaments. So I understand like not feeling safe with them. But I think if we're going to make those decisions and put ourselves like, give all the business to Phoenix, then we have to come through with some sort of aid package for employees because we are as a business running out of money to float any further, and we need some help. And I don't know, like I'm pretty discouraged this week. Like I'm trying to personally like gather some help to help employees so they can still have a Christmas, and it's just like sad, like I feel everyone's talking about how it's impacting small businesses, and that's really important, but we're not talking a lot about how it's impacting paycheck to paycheck employees, which like I also am one. So we're not talking about like someone who works on an hourly wage and tips, how this is affecting them. And I think we all know that small businesses are suffering right now, and I appreciate the recognition that everyone gives, but my really focus right now is let's talk about how it's affecting the servers and the front desk agent and the person that works the cashier at a small boutique retail store, or the busser or the chef. Like when business goes down, you have to cut hours, and when you cut hours, you cut wages and you cut tips. And so we're doing this right before Christmas, and it's just like making me so sad. I haven't slept for like 5 days. That to me is the most devastating part of this whole year, is just this last like blow.
Yeah, it's I mean, were you involved with I know the curfew was supposed to be initially at 8 p.m. Were you involved in kind of lobbying for it to be a little bit later?
No, I didn't like when the regulations rolled out at the very beginning of COVID, like back in March and April. I was asked to be on like an advisory panel to the city and county, but if there was one this time, I wasn't asked to be a part of it. Um, I personally am not a believer that I don't think a curfew impacts the spread of the virus, um, because people who are going to be gathering are going to do it curfew or not. I think 8 p.m. was way too early. I think 10 p.m. is just, I don't think it makes enough of an impact for our hospitals, and it devastates us economically. I think better, I have my own opinions. Like, I think if we had, there's other things that you can do. Um, but I won't get into it. But I don't think that was the best choice for the most impact on preventing spread of the virus. I think there was other things you could do that would have been not only more impactful and less economically devastating. But I was not like asked my opinion by anybody.
Yeah, it seems like the way that our elected officials have handled it, and I'm talking more from a bipartisan standpoint. It's not the Republicans are good and the Democrats are bad on this front, or the opposite. But I think they've handled it so horrendously, and they've done everything in the worst possible way. So shutdowns without the stimulus, like you're talking about, and yeah, I mean, there's such a disconnect between when we're talking about the economy, we're talking about people. It's not like you were explaining earlier. It was pretty heart jerking, honestly, because it's not about 401ks. It's not about the stock market. It's about kids eating food and staying in houses. It's about people having an outlook on the future where they can like actually pursue things that they want to do, and enjoy life, instead of being consumed by stress and being torn apart by decisions that they have no control over. Um, and
Yeah.
I think, yeah, it's one of the big challenges right now is looking in the future and saying that I can feel hope that things are going to get better. I think a lot of people are struggling to um, see that it's going to be a long recovery for sure.
And I do think, and just like on full disclosure, I'm like the most bipartisan person you'll ever meet. Like I voted for some people who are in office right now, and I don't vote by party. I'm registered independent. Um, and I think Tucson will be okay because we have such a vocal community. Like there are people that are speaking up, and advocating for better policy. It may not happen overnight, like you said, but just in the interim for the right now, like my priority is figuring out for like my own microcosm of Hotel McCoy, like how can I respond to this lack of hours to like make sure that everyone at least has like an okay Christmas, because I think it's like a personal thing. I grew up in like with not a lot of money in like a rural area, and we had years where we like literally skipped Christmas because of money, and that is like really hard for kids because you get fed this line like Santa will bring you presents when you're good, and it's like, well, actually, like if your parents don't have any money, then psychologically what does that do with the kids? So I think I'm on this like personal mission to make sure that everybody has some sort of Christmas, and so that's why like it's been making me so sad. This just, I thought, because we'd been like October, November, I'm like, okay, we're still here, like people are staying with us, and everybody's been like safe, like because of all of our policies and procedures. And then I just was not expecting anything different in December, and I wasn't expecting a change in policy. And I guess even when I heard about it, I didn't realize that it would impact us so much until like the sporting events got canceled, and I was like, oh boy. And so just I'm sort of tapped out of resources as a business and as an individual on how to respond to this, and so that's what makes it like really hard.
Yeah, I mean, it's been pretty impressive to see your optimism throughout this conversation, and I think that there's a guy named Anthony Pompliano, and one things he says is to never underestimate the spirit of the American entrepreneur. And I think that is it's a very true state. Entrepreneurs, I think, have a whole different attitude and outlook on life, in the sense of, you're a problem solver. You see issues and you try and bring solutions, like real action.
Yeah. I follow like Gary Vee or Gary Vaynerchuk a lot, and I think that like I like his attitude. He's always just like kindness, lead with kindness and be as optimistic as you can. You have to be pragmatic, but it doesn't really do any good to like curl up in a ball and be in despair. It's like you have to kind of forge ahead and do what you can to turn things around. I mean, it's okay to be upset or sad, but when you're moving forward, it has to be sort of with like a belief that things are going to get better and that you have power to make them better.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I the timing for me and my business venture this year has been pretty good. What with um, the price of Bitcoin spiking and
Yeah.
interest growing in it, but then also just like everything that people in the Bitcoin space have been predicting for years, as far as like um, poor monetary policy by the Fed and by the Treasury Department. Um, it just like globally too. It's all kind of coming true, and it feels good to be a part of something that like gives me hope for the future, of like having a tool that could really like empower people, because
Yeah.
um, I hate seeing unfair wealth inequality. And, I don't think that wealth inequality is inherently bad, because I think that people that produce more should be rewarded for it. But, in our current monetary system, there's the people that are in the big club and the people that everybody else that isn't. And we see that pretty clearly in Tucson, where the majority of us are not in the club. We're just kind of hanging on, get gradually getting poorer and poorer by inflation. And as everybody else, or not everybody else, is a very like small portion of the population really benefits from it. And it can be really demoralizing if you don't have the tools to really fight it. And the thing that's incredible about Bitcoin is it is a peaceful revolution. It's not going outside of Jeff Bezos's house with guillotines. It's like we saw this year. It's having a form of money that people can't just like arbitrarily debase and steal from you, which I think is empowering. I did an interview with a restaurant owner in Canada who put all of his company's savings in Bitcoin.
Oh, wow.
Um, yeah, that was a pretty cool interview. But we're starting to see that Mass Mutual has a big position in Bitcoin now. MicroStrategy does, and I think that's going to be a growing thing. And I hope the small businesses don't miss out, because if you have savings in cash, it's just a melting ice cube that's going to be gone. And
Yeah.
it's
No, I think people are hungry for a way to take back some semblance of financial control.
yeah. I mean, my experience before Bitcoin was having no financial control whatsoever, of like living the paycheck to paycheck lifestyle. And
Yeah.
it's I mean, one of the things that I've enjoyed listening to you talk about is just that low time preference of looking into the future and thinking long term, because that's so opposite of the majority of the way our society works. And I think it's a definite recipe for success. Yet the Fed would probably disagree. They want you spending and borrowing as much as possible.
Yeah.
So yeah, where or some how could the community support Hotel McCoy during this time of trouble?
Um, well, we always love if people like we say plan for the future, right? One way like people can support any like local business or local independently owned hotel or hospitality industry in us is to say, postpone, don't cancel. So if you have a reservation somewhere and you don't feel comfortable going, instead of canceling, you can postpone and just ask for a credit on a future stay. That's super helpful. Secondly, is planning for the future. Like, all right, if you don't feel comfortable booking a stay right now, book one for May or June or whenever you feel like you're going to be comfortable. If you have the cash now, like that really helps us. And then like some non-financial ways that people can support us, because I know not everyone has the funds right now to support financially, are going on like a website like Google or TripAdvisor and leaving a 5-star positive review or 10-star, whatever it is. And I never ask people to lie, but it's like if you've garnered any positivity off of us, whether it's like you want to go there and say 5 stars, their social media is really uplifting, or 5 stars, they're really active in our community. Those positive reviews help us because they make people who are comfortable traveling and coming to Tucson choose us, over say like a more corporate place. That's another way. Engaging on social media with us. Every time you engage on social media with a small business, if you save their post, share their post, comment, or like on their post, the algorithm of Instagram will then show it to other people. So that's like another way that people can support businesses like Hotel McCoy. And I would just say, like, for anyone watching or listening, if there's a small business that if you hear that they close, like let's say tomorrow you love Hotel McCoy and someone said Hotel McCoy closed down, if like that thought invokes any kind of emotional reaction with you about any business, like I have my favorite restaurant in Tucson, and if they closed, I'd be devastated. Like, then support them now. Go buy a gift certificate, go buy takeout food, book a future stay, support them on social media, leave them a positive review. Anything you can do right now to support small businesses is really helpful. I think the statistic now is that 1 in 6 restaurants in America has closed. And hotels are not far behind. And it's the small guys that are closing, not the corporations. We're not seeing a lot of like Applebee's and Best Western's closing, but we're seeing a lot of independent restaurants and hotels closing. So those are just some ways that they can support. Plan for the future, postpone, don't cancel, positive reviews, and engaging on social media.
And Applebee's sucks.
I
Best
mean,
Western, not far behind.
I haven't been to one in a long time, but I did love myself a mudslide when I was 21.
So you guys have a bar that people can just drop in and get coffee and stuff like that?
Normally, yes. It's closed. It's closed for dine-in now, so it's just takeout. But people can come and grab. We only do Tucson craft beer and Arizona wine. So if someone wants a bottle of like wine for Christmas, we sell bottles of wine to go. We have a really cool gift shop of like local Tucson made goods. We have an art gallery. Art is a great Christmas gift, and any piece of art you buy from the hotel, 100% of the money goes to the artist. So that's a really great way to support the artists in our community. And we have pieces like from $25 all the way up to 2,000. So there's a little something for every art lover out there. I don't know if people know they can just come to our gallery and purchase art.
Yeah, I might have to check that out.
Yeah, we have some really cool pieces.
Well, I gotta say, I'm pretty blown away by this conversation and what you guys are doing. So I definitely will seek ways to support you guys, because I think this is, and that's one of the greatest parts about Tucson too, is the attitude of pro local businesses and pro community oriented things. I think that's one of the.
I don't know that we would have had the same story to tell if we weren't in Tucson. And that's like one of the reasons why I'm going to sit here and like fight for our community, because Tucson's a special place.
Yeah. And I think, if anybody's listening to this, and one of the things that's really difficult about a chaotic time like this is it's really easy to retreat into yourself and just numb out and throw on the Mandalorian or whatever. And, but yeah, I mean, doing things that are tangibly helping your community are ways to like really find meaning and purpose in the times of chaos.
100%. Yeah. I can say very like honestly, Hotel McCoy needs the community right now. And that can be repeated for any local business right now. Like I said, it doesn't have to be financially, just like even words of encouragement, like when someone comments on our social media, like, we love you guys and we can't wait to stay with you again. All of our employees read it, and
Hmm.
it is encouraging. Just encouragement alone goes a long way.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I really appreciate your time and uh, look forward to staying in contact in the future and
Yeah, thank you
maybe
so much
seeing
for
you
thinking
over at
of
the,
us.
yeah. Yeah, if I'm gonna be honest, I felt my eyes tear up a couple of times during that conversation. It's just so hard to see the pain in our communities, and I think it's something that is discredited, and a lot of people are just being trashed and demonized right now. The thing that's difficult about a crisis like this is that there's just so much nuance involved. Any decision has adverse effects, and it's really sad, the way that our governments have responded. It's like they want to do everything in the worst way possible. They want to shut down and restrict businesses without any sort of financial help, and it's it's just silly. Like the idea of rallying behind and trusting in these people is just so ludicrous. And I'm not talking about Donald Trump or Joe Biden. I'm talking about all of them. They're all complicit in this. They're all complicit in the destruction of our communities. And it's going to be awful to see the long-term impacts of these decisions. But yeah, I mean, I think that's why conversations like this are so important, because it gives us tools to really support our community, to go out and support local businesses that treat their employees well, really believe in supporting local. I mean, I think that's a winning business model. I really do. Especially in a place like Tucson that's so community oriented. It's taken away from these. Now, I'm not like anti-corporation necessarily. Like, I think there's a lot of corporations that add a lot of value to our society. But what I'm against is the monetary system that punishes normal people and essentially incentivizes these larger corporations to act in a way that's so irresponsible to just rile up so much debt and get bailed out with our money. Like, this was a big issue that came up in 2008, and it's an issue that I haven't heard a lot of talking about in the mainstream. These bailouts of these large corporations that give their executives these $1 million bonuses while getting declaring bankruptcy and getting bailed out with our money. It's just ludicrous, and businesses, the smaller businesses aren't getting that. Like, yeah, whatever. I'll get off my soapbox, but I think in a crisis like this, when we're all wrestling with despair and it's struggling to see hope for the future, having really tangible ways to make a difference is so helpful. And one of the things she talked about is you may not have money, but you can go out on social media and support these local businesses. You can just do all sorts of different things. Tell your friends. I'm going to tell my family to stay there every time they come and visit Tucson instead of wherever else they stay, because it's such a cool place. And I think they'll really enjoy it too. It's not like you're sacrificing quality to support local either. Like, there are some amazing local businesses that are so fantastic. And, even competitively, or even competitive when it comes to rates. That's one of the things that they focus on, is making affordable rates. And it's just so cool to see how they've handled the crisis so far. And I look forward to seeing what they do in the future. And yeah, I might spend New Year's over with them. I'm doing a live stream that day with some local Arizona Bitcoiners. I might head over to Hotel McCoy afterwards. I think that'd be a lot of fun. But yeah, if you want to learn more about Bitcoin, Bitcoin is the ultimate tool to step out of this nonsense, to be self-sovereign financially. We're all getting poorer and poorer, when we're getting paid in cash due to inflation. And all these smart economists and government officials say that inflation doesn't really exist and we need to target a certain inflation rate. And any normal person knows that that's a load of BS. All you have to do is just look back at how more expensive things have gotten over the past 10 years. Like, look at rent, look at healthcare, look at education, look at food. Gas has gone down, but that's a whole nother topic in and of itself. But you look at all these things and then compare it to how much you're getting paid at work. Has that followed the same rate that we've been experiencing the increase in these prices? No, it hasn't. Bitcoin, on the other hand, doesn't have a magical money printer that some person sitting in a secretive bank can just like endlessly print at will. It has a very fixed supply schedule, so it has a monetary policy and a level of scarcity that nothing before it has ever had. And that's why we're seeing these big corporations say that holding cash is dumb, bonds are stupid, we need to put our money somewhere, and they're putting it in Bitcoin, and it's really, really exciting. And I think that more and more people can do it too, but it's so much more than a financial tool for your financial health. That's just a small part of it. What Bitcoin is about tearing down the broken financial system and really empowering people, becoming a self-sovereign person. Because when you're self-sovereign, when you have your finances in check, you can do these things. You can go out and support these local businesses. You have the freedom to do things that you wouldn't be able to do if you're living paycheck to paycheck. And part of that is the number goes up technology. Bitcoin is just, kind of designed to increase in value. But a large portion of it is just operating unencumbered by government. The bank can't freeze your funds if you're doing stuff. And, people hear that and they typically think of illegal activities or whatever. But it comes down to all sorts of things. It comes down to freedom of press. It comes down to freedom of expression. The First Amendment comes down to the Fourth Amendment. It's just, Bitcoin is an insurance policy against government tyranny, and we have seen the government do awful things to people over and over again, and that's a bipartisan issue. It's not a Republican or Democrat. This demonization of one side is so awful because it takes away so much power from us, the people, and two, it's disastrous. It allows for there to be no accountability, and having your money in something that can't be debased, can't be arbitrarily seized, can't be taxed out of existence is phenomenal. It's a game changer. So if you want to learn more, I got some beginner classes on, or not classes, but talks on Patreon. You can join for $1 a month. But yeah, I'm always happy to have a conversation. You can reach out to me on Twitter at the Tucson Bitcoin Podcast. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm sort of on Facebook, begrudgingly. And you can email me at betteringtucsonblockchain@gmail. And I just, I want to see people empowered, like Nicole in this interview. We have a community that's hurting right now, and we need problem solvers. It's so much more than just whining and moaning on social media about how terrible this person is. It's about taking action, and Bitcoin gives us the opportunity to do it in a way that isn't violent. And I love that, because the last thing I want to see is my community just fall apart into chaos. But yeah, anyways, that was really long-winded. I hope you enjoyed this interview, and have a good one.